So one of the reasons I picked this up is that it was shortlisted for the Goodreads Science Fiction Award in 2018. And honestly, just how did anyone vote for this as one of the best science fiction books in 2018? Hi, I'm Christina, and this is a book review, well, more of a rant review of Vox by Christina Dalcher. This is a science fiction book published in 2018, and it's set in America in the present day. It imagines a time when women have little to no rights. Every single female in the country has been fitted with a counter which allows the wearer to speak 100 words a day. If you speak more than 100 words, you'll receive an electrical charge. And then if you continue to speak, the charge will increase until you essentially electrocute yourself to death. It isn't only the language and words of women which has been restricted. Women are no longer allowed to have jobs. They're no longer allowed to have a passport. They're no longer allowed to have control of their own finances. That goes to their nearest male relative. And little girls are no longer allowed to be taught how to read or how to write. So it's a pretty dire future. This has all come about because of the Pure movement, which is a type of extremist religious movement. And the President of America has aligned himself with the leader of the Pure movement. Now, I think that sounds like a really great premise. And I think it had the foundations of what could have been a really excellent book. But overall, it just fell flat for me. And I have quite a few reasons why it fell flat. The main character is Dr. G. McKellen, and she is a leading cognitive linguist. Well, a former leading cognitive linguist, because obviously she's not allowed to work anymore. And her research focuses on trying to restore the speech and the language of people who have suffered brain injuries. Jean is the mother of 4 children. Her eldest is a 17-year-old son called Stephen, and then she has twin boys, and her youngest is a 6-year-old daughter called Sonia. Now, I am going to give away some spoilers for the book now, so if you do want to read it, not that I would recommend reading it, pause the video here. Right, so if you're still here, obviously some spoilers ahead. So Jean is the main character. She just frankly feels one-dimensional. So another disappointing thing about this book is the predictability of the plot. So obviously you need Jean to come into her own and do something for the plot. So the president's brother suffers a skiing accident and he has brain damage. So that's the catalyst to what brings Jean and her team back to work. And she was conducting research before on people who had suffered brain damage and trying to restore their speech and their language. So the huge, great reveal that the government is going to use her research to do the opposite and to take away people's language and people's speech and just remove the power of speech. I mean, it was quite obvious. I mean, what else really would they do with her research? We already know that women are only allowed to speak 100 words a day. So to invent some kind of serum that you can inject to all women and make sure that they never ever speak again, it was obvious. So another thing is the lack of excitement or tension in the writing. At one point, the mailman, Del, gets abducted. And I think it has to be one of the most boring and tedious and dull abductions ever written in history. I mean, there was just absolutely no impact. I was just reading it going, guess he's been abducted. It could have been so exciting. This could be kind of like a pivotal moment where you know Del the mailman is one of the good guys and he's one of the first people you meet who's trying to revolutionise, you know, overthrow the government. And he could have been such an interesting character, and when he gets abducted, it could have been such an exciting moment, but I was just like, huh. Another thing that kind of struck me as I was reading this, and it became very repetitive and very tedious, was Jean's constant comparisons between her husband, who is the chief scientific advisor to the president, and her lover, who she's also having a baby with. It's just, there's just so much comparisons between them. It's like, oh, the husband's never really does anything and he just keeps his head down and he'll never make a fuss. He's never going to stand up for her. He's never going to stand up for their daughter. And then the other side, you've got Lorenzo, and he would definitely do that. And then she compares them all the time. And it's just like getting banged over the head repeatedly with a stick, like the husband, oh, Lorenzo. And I just, like, it didn't bother me so much in the beginning, but as I was like plodding through the book, the constant comparisons between these two men, it got really, really obvious and really just, it was just kind of jarring. I didn't like it. And the hero of the piece ends up being the husband, Patrick, and he obviously conveniently died so she can be with Lorenzo, her lover, who she wants to be with, and it's painfully obvious that she does. And I thought it was strange that nobody seemed to grieve for Patrick. She didn't really grieve for him, and then none of the kids did, and there was no emotional impact. Again, I was like, you're one of your main characters, you know, your husband, he's a father, and no one seems to care. It's just kind of like they kill him off conveniently and then nothing. And the other thing that was strange is that your hero of the piece is Patrick, the husband, and he's a man, and I would have thought the idea was that women were going to, you know, overthrow it, or maybe even someone more like the male Mandel and his wife. Maybe they could have been the people who overthrew it, not just the man who was kind of passively sitting along with the president as the chief scientific advisor, the one who let all of these things happen, you know, let his wife lose her job and let her got the counter, and let the same thing happen to his 6-year-old daughter. She's no longer allowed to read or write, and he just allowed all of this to happen, and then suddenly he's the hero. And I'm just like, again, that just seems, the character development of that one, it just doesn't seem to work. So there's also a trio of characters that aren't explored more fully or really developed properly, and I think it's such a shame that they don't have more of a pivotal role in this. So you have a married couple, Del and Sharon, and Del is the postman and obviously his wife, and they're an interracial couple, and from the very, very beginning they have been trying to break down the government, and they are basically the forebearers of the resistance, and they're just kind of minor characters and they're just kind of slotted in, and it's like it would have been so much more interesting if you kind of brought them in more. I mean, they're meant to be, well, in the book, they are the first people you meet who are forming any kind of resistance to what's going on. Jean, our main character, she's doing nothing at all. None of the actual characters, none of her family are doing anything. It's just these two people. It would have been a much more interesting story if you focused on these characters. I mean, obviously you needed Jean because she is the cognitive linguist and she's the one that's making the serum and gonna wipe out people's language. But it was just a shame that they weren't kind of developed more fully and had kind of a greater role. I think that was a shame. I think it's kind of a missed opportunity there. And the other character I think was underused was Jackie. And she's a lesbian activist, and she was the person who was always trying to make Jean interested in politics and trying to make her stand up for things that are important and talk about things that matter to her and matter to society, whereas Jean was never really interested in any of that. So Jackie was always the person as her roommate who was trying to like open her eyes to the world and to what's happening in politics and how they need to do something about it from day one. And Jean was just like, no. And because of this, eventually their friendship just kind of broke down. And then you kind of see Jackie a little bit more when she's on TV at the start of the movement, when things are happening, first starting to happen to kind of decrease women's rights. And she's kind of just like, oh, that's Jackie from university, but we don't really ever get to see Jackie's point of view. And then later on, she pops up again. But I think, again, it's another character that could have been really pivotal and just so much more interesting, like to even have her perspective sometimes, or maybe if even she was the main character. I mean, she was the person from the beginning who saw the way the politics was going and tried to do something about it. And yeah, our main character is basically the sheep. It's just Jean who never tried to change anything. And then at the very, very end, you've got Jackie, who's basically leading up the resistance, and she's kind of the head of it. And there's obviously so much more work to do. They've kind of overthrown the government, and the president's dead and the important people are dead, but essentially you still got the political structure and the structure of society as it is. So there's so much more work to do to try to restore how it was before, and to try and relieve the oppression from the women and the girls. And yet our main character, Jean, she just leaves. Like she genuinely leaves the country. So her and Lorenzo, her lover and the unborn child, and her children, they just go to Italy, which is where Lorenzo's from, and she's half Italian and her parents live there. And so when everything has finished and the hard work again, it's going to start, you're going to have to try and sort out these issues, she just leaves. And I mean, Jackie's the one who stays, and yet we don't hear anything about Jackie. It seems strange that all your kind of main characters just left the country, and it's kind of left to the very, very minor characters to fix society. It just feels strange, to be honest. The whole thing just fell flat, and it was very dull and lackluster for something that could have been really, really interesting. And I think it lacked a lot of subtlety as well. There was nothing subtle about this. It never felt like there was any tension. I never felt like excited or scared or any kind of emotion for any of the characters. There was no build up to anything really. And I don't know if I'm judging this book too harshly, because I've read quite a lot of dystopian fiction and they've just done it just so much better than this. And I think the thing is that their delivery was just so much better than this. I think overall it could have been a really great piece of social commentary on the importance of standing up for what you believe in and getting involved in politics, and the importance of voting and researching politics. And if you don't act, this could have been a cautionary tale to what could happen. I mean, obviously very out there, but politics and things are important. And I kind of have the feeling that Christina Dalcher was trying to, provide social commentary on that. And I think it could have been done really, really well, but it just kind of fell flat. And I don't think, if that was the message she was trying to portray, I don't think she really did it with this book. And I think that's a shame. I just found it overall very, very disappointing. It could have been, I think it could have been something really great. I have one more rant review on my channel, so I'll link that down below if that's the kind of thing you like. Otherwise, thank you for watching, and please subscribe if you'd like to see more of me talking about books. Alright, bye!